Hello, welcome back to my channel. I have Winnie with me here today. I know she's kind of cranky because I woke her up from her nap. Hi, sweetie. I know. I wanted to talk about how I met my husband. So it was about 10 years ago, and I was a lonely school counselor in Bakersfield. And he was actually in LA. He was a grad student. He was going to USC for film production. And we actually met on Match.com. Now, we're not affiliated with the website, by the way. I have no idea if Match is even still around these days, but we are a success story, and I'm sure there are plenty of success stories. So I was in Bakersfield, and the dating scene, there really wasn't much going on, at least around me. The guys who were decent, they were either already married or they were gay. So I decided to expand my search, I guess. I just wanted to jump back into the dating scene after being single for a couple of years. I felt ready to jump back. I one day decided to join Madge. Now, this was after, you know, some time on Tinder. I also tried Coffee Meets Bagel. I don't know if that's around these days. I know Tinder's still around. Of course, that's the ultimate hookup app, right? Even 10 years ago, it was a hookup app. But that said, I do have friends who have met and are now happily married, and so it works. However, when I joined Tinder, for some reason, I received a lot of private messages with inappropriate dick pictures on them. And I always wondered, like, what about my face invites people, men, to send these pictures of themselves? Anyways, after a month of being traumatized by different pictures, I was like, okay, I'm done with that. Coffee Meets Bagel was okay. I just was ready for something different, and I saw an ad. I know, goddamn ad got to me. But it said, if you don't match with anyone within the first 3 months, we'll give you a refund. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty reasonable. I think it was like $100 or something like that. I can barely remember, so don't quote me on that. But anyway, so I remember thinking it was a good deal. Why not? I wasn't looking for marriage. No, 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 no. I was actually one of those women who would be going around saying, I am never getting married. I would rather have a baby from a sperm donor than get married. There was just something about marriage that I thought, oh, I'm going to have to sacrifice my freedom and my independence, and I don't want to. And I was also thinking like, oh, like you just have sex with one person for the rest of your life? That's kind of boring. Oh, how do you spend decades and decades together with just one person? And I was always the type, maybe it's the Sagittarius in me, but I would just get bored easily, you know? Anyways, I'm rambling, going off topic, jumping all over the place. So I joined Match because I wanted to meet more decent men. I figured, oh, if you have to pay for a subscription, you're going to meet more decent people. And I remember it was a rainy day. I had already made the profile, but with Match, oh, you have to answer all these different questions. There's like this long questionnaire that you have to fill out. And then at the end, you get to your bio, your profile, and you have to, basically write a bio about yourself. So I had filled out all the questions already, and I had gotten to the bio part, but I was like, oh, I don't really want to do this. And so I waited a week, and then it was Friday afternoon. It was raining, and I thought, oh, I'll just work on my Match profile. So I remember sitting in my bed, and I was just kind of typing out like this long paragraph about myself. And something like popped up on the bottom left of my screen. I still remember this clearly as if it happened yesterday. I clicked on the picture, and I was like, oh, he's cute. And of course, I like went through all his photos. It looked like he had been in the military, and he was a pilot. He flew Black Hawks in the Army. And I was like, oh, I've always had a thing for pilots ever since Top Gun, the first one, not the recent one, back when Tom Cruise was decent looking. And I don't like Tom Cruise, by the way. But Top Gun was a pretty cool movie. And I also saw that he had been stationed in Korea. So I was thinking, oh, we have another thing in common. And there's just something about a man in a uniform. It's just, I think it's sexy. There, I said it. A man in uniform is sexy. I read his profile, his bio, and he had actually filled it out like quite a bit. And you could really get a sense of who he was as a person just by reading his bio. I liked that he took his time, and I could just feel his personality. But that's when I decided to send him a wink. I think it was that night. Yeah, he sent me a wink back, and he sent me a message, and we started talking. We talked every day. We're just messaging back and forth, talking about Korea and his army days, and me being a school counselor and this and that. And then I was actually supposed to go down to LA, and I said, hey, I will be free after this time. You want to meet up for drinks? And so we decided to meet at this bar in Atwater, LA. It's called Bigfoot Lodge. And we're supposed to meet at 9 for drinks. So I got there a little early, and I was just kind of drinking my usual Jack and Coke at the bar. Yes, I used to be a whiskey girl, loved my Jack and Cokes with a little slice of lemon in it. And he was a little late, but I didn't mind too much because I was just enjoying my drink, and I was chatting with the bartender, and I was telling him, yeah, I'm waiting for my date right now, and kind of nervous but excited. Anyways, the door opens, and next minute I feel his hand on my shoulder, and I turned to look at him, and there he was. He was in this like grayish, purplish like sweatshirt and a leather jacket. And I was like, oh my God, he looks exactly like his photo. He's so cute. I think the first thing that I noticed was his smile. He had like the prettiest smile, perfect teeth, which I found out later that he had never had braces. Like, what the F? And then his eyes, his like beautiful hazel eyes. So we started talking. He was apologizing. Apparently he was at like a friend's play, and then he met like this terrible Uber driver. I really didn't give a shit. I actually bought him his first drink too. I'm not the type of person who's like, oh, I'm the woman and you're the man, so you have to buy me the drinks. I'm usually the one who's like, I'll get the first round, you get the next. And, where was I? Yeah, so we ended up just talking and talking. And then he found out that I loved playing pool. That was my jam. I loved playing pool. Picked it up when I used to bartend back in college, and I played for many, many years. There was something satisfying about men in particular who would underestimate me for being a woman, and they naturally assumed that I didn't know how to play properly, or if at all. And so I would kick their asses. Oh, that was just the best feeling. The look of surprise on their faces when I put that black ball in. Anyways, so we went to this Irish bar downtown LA called Casey's. Went there to play pool, ended up just talking the entire time, and did not play pool at all. And it was packed. It was so packed that we had to like stand really close together, and I was just kind of like looking up at him, and I could smell his cologne. I liked how he smelled too. I'm very sensitive to scents, and scents, smells are so important to me. Isn't that right, Winnie? Yeah. So we both found out that we loved karaoke. So we took an Uber and we went to K-Town. And it was one of those Korean karaokes where you have those private rooms. And we were just singing, and we sang Aladdin, A Whole New World. And that's like one of the perfect songs to do and duet. And then we had our first kiss in karaoke. It was awesome. So by the time we were done, because usually you get like an hour and you can add on more time, but I mean, if we were drunk and tired and it was probably 3 in the morning, I was like, okay, I'm going to go to my car and maybe take a nap and then I'll drive up. And then he was like, no, like, what do you mean you're going to go to your car? Like, just come over. You can take a nap at my place. No funny business. Those were his words exactly. And then I'll take you to your car in the morning when the sun's up. And when he said no funny business, I was like, huh, I actually believe you. And indeed, I went to his place. He actually lived in this huge house. He had about 7 roommates, all grad students from his program. It was like this old, creepy looking house. Like it looked like it would be haunted, to be honest. But anyways, so I remember going up the stairs. His room was like on the very end of the hallway, and took a nap. I mean, we fooled around a bit, of course, but no funny business. And I was like, oh, the self-control in this man. I really liked that. Now, I'm not the type, again, who, is like, oh, I'm going to get to know you. I have to go on, this many dates before I sleep with you. There have been times when I did that, and there have been times when I didn't do that. But with him, I mean, we were just exhausted. So we kind of both just passed out. But I just really liked the self-control, because most, and I say most men that I have met, they would always try to push, push the boundary. It's like, of course. But he didn't. I mean, we fooled around a little bit, and then he was like, okay, we're done. I'm like, I like that. I like that. Respect. Anyways, we snuggled up, we took a nap, and then a few hours later, he drove me to my car, and then I drove off to Bakersfield. And since then, we talked every single day. Messaging. He came up to Bakersfield to see me. I will go down to LA to see him. So we would kind of have alternating weekends. The second weekend, actually, our second date, and this is really funny, he texted me and he's like, hey, my brother, who is gay, well, he doesn't call himself gay. He doesn't do labels. He's more a lover of all people. Well, anyway, so in the text message, he said, my gay brother, he invited me to an amateur porn screening. Do you want to go? Now, normally, I would be weirded out. Like, amateur porn screening with your brother, okay? But for some reason, I trusted him. I don't know, maybe it was our connection. Maybe it was the fact that he had self-control. When he said no funny business, he actually meant it and he stuck to it. I don't know. But instead of being weirded out, I was intrigued. And I was thinking, amateur porn screening, okay. At first I was like, oh, are people doing it live on stage? Or I don't even know what I was thinking. So I was like, sure, count me in. Drove down to LA, got there by 7, and I met his brother, and we walked into the movie theater. We were actually running a little bit late, and we walked in, and we had to kind of like, walking between people, and it was packed. It was packed. And, there were penises and breasts on the screen. And we sat down and watched it for, I think it was like an hour and a half. But it was a bunch of just short films, amateur short films. There was one film I remember in particular, and it was Detective Dick. And it was a bunch of erect penises. And they stuck little hats and googly eyes on the penises, and they had like these little cutout drawings of like the police cars, and it was just a little short film about detective dicks. But then as the film went on, these erect dicks, they started going really limp until like all you can see was just like the tip of the penis with the googly eyes and the hat. Anyways, it was hilarious. So the whole movie theater, it was a very serious crowd. It was like an artsy crowd. And I mean, we were kind of giggling and like looking around, but everyone was just kind of quiet and serious. So that was interesting. Anyways, and then we went out for drinks after. We went dancing afterwards. I had my noodles. I love noodles. At like 1 or 2 in the morning at this Japanese bar. It was delicious. And then for our third date, I was actually going down to San Diego. That's where I went to grad school. And I just randomly texted him and was like, do you want to go to San Diego with me? He was like, sure. And apparently his brother and his wife, and their 2 kids, they just had a newborn too. They were in San Diego for the weekend. And so that weekend, I ended up meeting the other brother. And we met my friends from grad school. We went to the beach and we hung out with his brother and his wife. That was fun. And then we also went to Little Italy in downtown San Diego. It was just a really quick but fun trip. Now, our 4th date was to a car dealership. I had been looking for a used car, didn't know anything about cars, and so of course I asked him to come with me. And I wanted a Hyundai Elantra specifically. I don't know why. I don't know what I was thinking back then, but I just wanted a Hyundai Elantra. I think they were small and sporty looking, and so I was drawn to that at the time. He came with me and we went to several different dealerships, including, the usual CarMax. And it was at the parking lot of one of the car dealerships. We had just taken one of the Elantras for a drive around, and we're walking, and he goes, "Oh, it must be nice to have your boyfriend help you out with things like this." And I looked at him and I was like, "Oh, so you're my boyfriend now, huh?" And he goes, "Yeah." And so that was it. That was the beginning of our official relationship. Now, that was in March. So we first met up in March, and then, April, it was like every other weekend. I would drive down and he would drive up. And then in May it was his graduation. So I ended up meeting the whole family. They all came, including his parents. Loved his mom. I remember one of the first times I actually spoke to her on the phone because he was like, "Oh, I'm with my girlfriend, Kim." And she was like, "Oh, I want to talk to her." So I got on the phone and she's like, "Oh, did you know that half Korean and half white babies are really cute?" Loved it. Thought she was hilarious. She had no filter, and she was quite raunchy in her own way. I loved it. I thought she was so much fun. We were at this bar after his graduation, and we smoked together. She was quite the personality. In June, I came down to LA. It was the beginning of summer vacation, and I stayed with him for the summer. And of course, when you live together, things progress faster. You really get to know the person for who they are. And we both realized then that, oh, we really get along very well. Of course, some of like my old habits and patterns and limiting beliefs decided to present themselves during that time, but we worked through them. And it wasn't long before we realized, like, hey, I could kind of see myself with you for the rest of my life. He ended up proposing to me after our usual walk. We went to go get coffee, and then we were walking around, and then we came home because it was just so hot. And he was in his underwear, and he suddenly proposed to me. It was totally unromantic. It was totally just us, just chill. Like, we were both in our underwear, actually, because it was so hot. And we were just lounging around. And he just popped the question just like that. We got married a few months after. And again, it was super chill, low key. We were actually thinking of not even having a proper wedding. We were just going to go to the court and sign some papers, save as much money as possible. I told him not to even get me a ring. And we needed witnesses, so we asked his brother to be there, and then his parents found out and they wanted to be there. My mom found out, she wanted to be there, and then his other siblings wanted to be there, and then his aunt and his cousins wanted to be there. So it ended up being a small, intimate event with about 20 something people, and it was perfect. It was just so amazing because we didn't get stressed out planning everything. The only thing we planned was probably like the restaurant, right? And then we got married at a wedding chapel called Albertsons. The night before, we were all at his brother's place in Santa Clarita, and there was a little pub down the street. So we went there for our little joint like bachelorette party. They had live karaoke there. It was hands down the best time. It was actually St. Patty's Day then too. the ladies, like my sisters-in-law, they had prepared some stuff, like we had little party hats and oh, I had a penis straw that I was using to suck in all the drinks. My mother-in-law loved it. She was kept asking me. I had an extra one, but that was the only one I had. And then yeah, it was just we got pretty wasted, but then got up the next day and got married. And then that night we had dinner at this amazing, it was like a Mexican fusion place. And then we called it a night early because we were just all hungover and exhausted. But yeah, that's pretty much how I met my husband and how we got married. How I went from I'm never getting married to getting married literally a year later. And here I am, still married 9 years later. And I would say we are both happily married. Yes, of course, every marriage deals with its own share of problems, but that's just something that you have to work through together, you know? Now, one of the big questions that people ask is, what is the key to a successful marriage? And we've been married 9, so maybe I don't have as much wisdom as those who have been married 20, 30, 40, 50 years. But I would say I married my best friend. Yes, it is about, trust and communication and respect and all that. But for me, I feel like we have so much fun together. He's one of the funniest, silliest, outrageous people that I've ever met. He keeps me on my toes. He's just so entertaining. He's so caring. And bottom line is, I think you have to meet someone that you really get along with. Like, he is my best friend. I tell him everything. I genuinely have so much fun hanging out with him because after a while, yes, like the hot sex and the lust and everything, they do die down. Our bodies naturally don't produce as many sex hormones. We get sick, right? Like when I was sick with all my surgeries, dealing with my endo and all that, like we didn't have sex for quite a while. And he never once pressured me. He never once made me feel guilty. He was just there for me. And you want someone who's there for you, really, through thick and thin, through sickness and in health. I really felt his dedication and his love for me. So meet someone that you can really grow old with. Meet someone who is your best friend that you genuinely like hanging out with. It shouldn't just be about the sex. The sex always dies down. It shouldn't just be about materialistic things because those things don't last. Marry your best friend. And who knows, maybe 10, 20 years later, I'll do another episode on like the actual key to successful marriage. Anyways, thank you for listening to my story, and I will see you guys next time.